Let's go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to FourthBrain's MLOps Program's info session. We are so glad to have you. We are going to go over several things today. We're going to go over the program, we're going to go over the curriculum, we're going to go over how to join, and there will be plenty of time for you to ask questions. So you should see at the right of your screen on YouTube, or possibly below it, depending on what device you're on, there should be a chat. Please put your questions there. We will be answering some of them along the way. We'll be saving some of them for the end. We will do our best to get to every single question, but please make sure you put them there. So here's a quick agenda of what we will be covering. I'll be introducing myself and our other presenter. We'll talk about FourthBrain, the curriculum, and like I said, making sure we have plenty of time for questions. So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Molly Larkin. I am the Director of Operations at FourthBrain. I've been here since just about over a year, since the beginning, before our first cohort started. I've been in alternative education programs for adults for almost 7 years now, and I'm really, really excited to be at FourthBrain. And I'd like to introduce Greg. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Molly. So my name is Greg Loughnane, and I've been teaching for a long time, nearly a decade, mostly in higher ed, while also doing a lot of work on the side in the ML and AI space, especially since about 2015. I ran my own consulting firm, doing a lot of ML pilot projects, working with data engineering teams to get those things into production. And really, I'm excited at kind of being able to work with FourthBrain on this new MLOps program. It's really at the tip of the spear here with what we're doing, taking ML and really putting it into products. So really excited to share with you guys what this program's all about today.
Great, thanks, Greg. And as Greg mentioned, but I just want to re-emphasize, Greg will be teaching our next iteration of this program starting in November. So I'm going to start by telling you just a little bit about what is this program and how is the program structured. So the program is designed to teach you how to deploy, test, and monitor ML models and pipelines. This is distinct from our machine learning engineer program, which is really focused on model development. We are not teaching machine learning per se in this MLOps course. We are teaching what happens after that model development: deployment, testing, monitoring, scaling, and all of that. Greg will go into more details a little bit later, but I just wanted to set that stage. Quick overview of the program. It is 12 weeks long, and it involves live instruction, which we think is what sets FourthBrain apart. We have live class on Saturdays from 9 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. And that's when you come together with your cohort, with Greg, and with our associate instructor to really dive into the content during the week and interact with your cohort mates. This is a tuition-based program. The tuition is $6,000. That does include cloud credits. So you do not have to come with your own setup on AWS or GCP or any other service. We provide that for you as part of the program. A little bit about our program structure. This is a hybrid program, and our goal is to develop both flexibility and accountability. Flexibility meaning it is online, it is virtual, and you'll be spending about 10 to 15 hours a week on your own time. That's with videos, readings, and assignments. We do have office hours during the week, and we do have a Slack group, so you always can get help, but you get to develop that schedule on your own. There's nothing to do during the week at a particular time. On Saturdays is when the accountability comes in. You get to come to class with Greg, with the rest of your cohort. There's a mixture of lecture, guest speakers, workshops, and a really big chunk of that time is spent actually live, working on a live assignment. So you get the best of both worlds in terms of keeping the flexibility and also coming together in a classroom format. This is designed for people with a full-time job. The vast majority of our students do have a full-time commitment. So it will be a busy few months, but definitely doable and definitely meant for people who are working or have another full-time commitment during the program. So I'm going to pause there. I see a couple questions coming in that I'm going to just answer now before we move on to our curriculum. Asking about certificates. Yes, this is a certificate-based program. So you will get a certificate upon completion of the program. Keep the questions coming. I'll make sure to periodically check and we can answer throughout, or I'll save some for the end as well. Great. With that being said, I want to hand it over to Greg to tell us a little bit more about the curriculum and really dive deep into what we'll be covering in the program.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. I really want to kind of start by echoing Molly's sentiment on the fact that this really is a place for you to come and meet like-minded people, really sort of aiming in the same direction as you, that are all kind of interested in learning what's happening, at the state of the art in ML right now, what's happening as companies are deploying ML first and AI first products, and how can you kind of get on this, speed train to the future with other people that really, they're not necessarily sure how to start. Maybe they're coming from an ops background, maybe they're coming from a more classical ML background, but they're really interested in how do we take these tools and how do we put them into production and actually create real value with them. For business critical applications. So, I think that this is going to be a great spot for all of us to come together and to really hold each other accountable, beyond just Saturday, hopefully. And we can even have, you can set up your own accountability groups. This is something I'll certainly encourage. And, I'm really excited to see what sort of dynamic that we can create together, because I think we have a unique opportunity. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the projects themselves first, because this is going to be a key differentiator for us in this program versus, like something that's more standalone. So I want to talk a little bit about project-based learning in this next slide, where, this is kind of going to be the real artifact that you take with you. This is going to form the basis for the story that you're able to tell when you leave the MLOps program. It's going to be your capstone. And so this is going to be something that you can opt to do sort of on your own. It's something that I would also highly encourage you to partner up with someone that you kind of can come to some sort of semblance of an agreement on what you should be working on and why. These are going to be a couple of different flavors of projects that we can see. We are partnered with some industry sponsors to do some specific projects, and those are really, really interesting. Obviously, they kind of take the work out of scoping. Why is this project relevant? Sort of the why is left to the companies. More of the how and the what are kind of left to you all. But you can also come in and say, hey, I really want to work on this particular project. I'm really interested in this particular thing. I really want to aim at a particular segment of industry or a particular company, or I actually want to help my own company, really try to implement a project we've been thinking about, and I'm going to use this course as an opportunity to do that. So we've got very structured projects, and then you can also come in and I'll work with you, and we've got other, support for you to work with. From our associate instructors to even some deployment experts that'll likely be helping us out to really help you structure what that should look like. So this is kind of the place to start, because it's what needs to be top of mind for you coming in, and it's certainly what's going to be kind of the capstone of the whole course, quite literally on the way out. So let's kind of taking a little step deeper into the course. And what this might look like to put a capstone together. You really are going to come out of this course with a few key sets of skills in terms of, MLOps skills themselves. There is the primary skill set that many of you are probably familiar with. Can you write a machine learning model in a Jupyter notebook? Can you input the data, process the data, create the model? All of this stuff is sort of before MLOps. Okay, so what we're really looking at when we come into MLOps is we're saying, now we have our data, we have our model, and now what I want to do is I want to create a web application. I want to create a mobile application. And then with that web application, I actually want to host it not just locally on my machine so that I can use it, but I actually want to host it in the cloud. And beyond then hosting it in the cloud, what we want to do is we want to say, okay, Now I can use my Jupyter Notebook script and I can run it. But can other people use my Jupyter Notebook script and run it at the same time, pinging that model? So instead of sort of just saying, do we have a model? Can we use it? We say, okay, can we use it now at scale? And what are some of the implications of using that model at scale? As we try to go from sort of 1 to N in terms of people hitting this model, using it, let's say it's a cost model that a sales team is using, for example. How many people are able to actually use this? And so when you put out pieces of marketing content, your company tries to get other people coming to use this model, how much is it able to actually handle? And what sort of tools can you use to make sure that that model can handle the load that you're looking to put on it, both from a usage perspective, sort of people pinging it, as well as, once we deploy models into production, then what we have to do is we have to say, when should we update this model? When should we look at making tweaks and iterations to this model? How should we think about the data that's coming in? And is it of the same distribution as the data that was originally scoped to create this model in the first place? This is around that sort of data-centric AI idea, that data centricity is, do we really need to deploy it and then monitor it? Yes, we do. And of course, that's when only about half of the work is done. And the rest of the work comes with saying, okay, when do we retrain the model? How do we think about filtering new data as we add it to the model? And really, how can we look at this machine learning model as now sort of a part of our software development product suite that really is going to have its own unique life cycle depending on not just the model infrastructure, not just the deployment infrastructure, but also on the data infrastructure side. So this course is focused on taking that model and really deploying it locally, then in the cloud, scaling that, going from 1 to N, and then really monitoring it on the back end. And that's kind of the true end-to-end nature of this. We don't really plug in live data streams to the front end to make it sort of this really, crazy iterative loop, but we do give you that experience to make sure that you deploy, you're able to test, you scale, you look at how that's working, and you certainly are monitoring usage and making sure that that model is performing for however many people that you plan to see it perform for. So this is kind of the basic 3 pillars of the course. Zooming in a little bit on this, we can see that we kind of can go week to week a little bit with a few different kind of basic ideas that follow this pattern. So this should kind of be pretty straightforward based on the previous discussion. Weeks 1 to 3, this is sort of meet MLOps week. This is like, okay, let's kind of, remove the uncertainty from like, what is this buzzword? How can we understand how it's different from, machine learning? How can we understand where ML and deep learning come in and play a role in MLOps? And then what are sort of the concepts that are going to guide some of our more tactical, applications that we really go to in the coming, weeks after kind of the beginning. The beginning is also going to be very much about scoping your projects and becoming very clear on what your projects are and what they're not, who you're going to be working with, and what the expectations are for the rest of the semester on those projects. Because as we move through deployment basics, and then we move through scaling and managing deployments, then what we're going to do is we're going to try to keep our capstone projects going alongside the curriculum. And we're going to try to make sure that we've got our model heading into deployment and we're ready to deploy. So this isn't going to be super focused on creating lots and lots of models throughout the entire program, although that's certainly something that we certainly I encourage you to be doing on the side as you're iterating and improving your data and your model for your particular project. But we can kind of break it into 3 chunks. We've got the basics, we've got the scaling and managing, and then we've got sort of streamlining deployments. This is sort of full stack ML right here, is sort of weeks 9 to 10. This is when we're kind of getting things really, really streamlined. We're being less kind of handcrafted and bespoke, and we're using some of the more streamlined tools that allow us to put things into production quickly. Lastly, we're going to sort of finish up with monitoring, and that kind of brings us into capstone. So the way that I really like to visualize this and think about this is through sort of layers of abstraction. So we can see on the next slide here that this sort of week one is sort of the base of the pyramid, week 1 to 3, where we're really saying, yes, we have, frameworks like deep learning frameworks like TensorFlow and like PyTorch. We have web application frameworks that we really need to kind of get a handle on to sort of turn our ML models into web apps. And then beyond that, we're sort of abstracting up another level, and we're saying, okay, well, now can we sort of push those, data and models, whether it be raw data or whether it be scripts, can we push them into containers? Those might be local in the beginning here, but we're going to quickly move into cloud-based containerization. And then, beyond putting our scripts and our data into containers, what we're going to do next is we're going to then orchestrate all of those containers. Like we're guiding an orchestra here, because there's very many moving parts. There's lots of things to keep track of. And there's some great frameworks out there that allow us to do that. We're going to really focus a lot on using Kubernetes. And Kubernetes, like TensorFlow, was originally developed at Google. It was originally one of these things that sort of became more relevant for many, many other people in the world beyond Google. And it's something that has really kind of set the standard in the industry for container orchestration for these ML models. And, sort of beyond just orchestrating containers, the next sort of level of abstraction is kind of what we might call workflow orchestration. But for us, because we're focused on MLOps, let's be more specific about it. And let's call it ML stack orchestration. So this is more of like full stack ML, all right? And there are some frameworks that allow us to actually do all of this relatively easily from a code perspective and from a lines of code perspective. And we're going to see that. And so this is pretty exciting. Kubeflow is a tool that was, for example, released just before the pandemic hit last year. So these are very, very new tools, and they're also very, very powerful tools. And so you're going to get experience with all of these tools coming into a program like this. This is something that you don't find very many places, if any, besides FourthBrain. And lastly, we're gonna look at kind of how can we look at monitoring, how can we track usage, how can we make sure things are happening that we expect to happen, that the app's not going down, people are able to ping it. Are there different types of deployments we should consider based on the things we're seeing in monitoring? This is sort of the top level of viewing down. And then, of course, at the end of the day, it's all about showtime. It's all about that capstone project. So really, this set of ML models to containers to orchestration and full stack ML, unsurprisingly, AWS and Google are allowing you to sort of streamline much of this, if not absolutely all of it. And they can certainly do that. They've got great tools built into these cloud platforms that are really full stack ML platforms in large part. And we're going to learn kind of all the specific tool words and buzzwords associated within AWS and Google Cloud Platform on that. And that's, again, as Molly mentioned, one of the real differentiators of this program is that we've got actually your ability to use AWS and GCP is built right in to this program. So that is a huge value for you, is that you can actually leverage these tools without, having no idea how much this stuff costs. All of a sudden you're out a couple $100 because you hosted one model on AWS SageMaker. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we will take care of for you. And it's a very, very important aspect when you talk about business value creation and time worth being invested into pilot projects on MLOps pipelines. It's a very, very relevant thing to keep in mind as you look at this program. And it's one that, we really feel like this is very unique to us. And managing this stuff is not easy. So hopefully you'll learn quite a bit about how to do that before you head out into the world, start spending a bunch of your own money on MLOps pipelines. So of course there are a ton of other tools. So if we can kind of just like go to this next slide, and this is the only slide where I'm going to kind of, badger you with logos. This is really kind of, just to give you a feel. We're going to mention a lot of things. I'm going to touch on a lot of content. There's a lot of sort of optional things that you can dive much, much deeper into. And depending on your particular situation, on your particular aims, I can certainly, recommend specific deep dives for you or for, your company's team. But we are going to touch on a lot. But that doesn't mean we're going to sort of super deep dive on a lot. We are going to touch on many of these things. And so if these things are of interest to you, I think the way much of this has come about is many of these things have been of interest to students in the past. So we do support a lot of optional content as well, outside of sort of the core content that guides the capstone. And so, in summary, really what you want to keep in mind as you think about this curriculum is you want to keep in mind that we're taking you through these levels of abstraction. So we can kind of conclude with kind of thinking about this level 1 to level 5 MLOps all the way to monitoring level of abstraction that takes us through data. That's sort of from data engineering to data science to deployment. That's on premise. That means on your local machine or machines deployment, to cloud deployment, and then through deployment into containerization, orchestration, full stack ML, and monitoring. So what we're really doing is we're able to go from not just 0 to 1, but from 1 to N. In many cases, N could potentially be very large, and what you learn in this course will be able to handle it. The last note I'll end on is that what we are set up to do with our current very structured and industry-sponsored programs is we're set up for projects that cover natural language processing. So these are text-based models. If you want to take some words in and predict something with those, that's certainly something that you can consider doing. Computer vision, so these are image-based models. You want to take some pictures, predict something, you can certainly do that as well. And then recommendation systems. You want to take some data in, you want to recommend something that could be even better than what's recommended today. Those are the 3 primary capstone projects that we're supporting this sort of semester. And beyond that, we can have sort of case-by-case one-off discussions about what might work best for you in your situation based on your aims. So with that, I'll sort of pass it back to you, Molly, to talk a little bit more about the additional support that they'll get outside of the curriculum.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. That was great to get such a deep dive. There's a couple questions that I want to touch on before we move on. So one of the questions that came up was, how far beyond monitoring will they get? And the specific question is about building a dashboard or building some sort of UI for that monitoring piece. And how deep, if at all, do you go into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will actually take it to the dashboarding stage, and you will be able to build custom dashboards. Certainly in the course, building out of super custom dashboards is not something that we're going to demand from all students, but by all means, we are going to set you up with the dashboarding capabilities with a tool called Prometheus. You can check that out. That's going to really allow you, a lot of times you can actually just click, hey, use default dashboard, and it kind of tells you everything that you need to know. But if it's really of interest to you to sort of curate these more sort of business intelligence kind of dashboards, that's absolutely sort of within the scope of a capstone project. And since monitoring is very much kind of on the back end, sort of post deployment, that does fall within the scope of the course. Yes.
Great. Second question that I thought we could address before moving on, it's about the models that you'll be using. So if we're sort of starting post model, whose model is it? Where does it come from? Do they train it? How does that work?
Yeah, so what we've got is we've got a lot of Google Colab notebooks that are set up most of the way, 95% of the way. And there are a few ways for you to go about interacting with the different models that we have set up or models beyond that. So for example, there are quite a few TensorFlow models that we've got that we can sort of hand directly off to you. So these are going to be neural networks that are kind of mostly, if they're not pre-trained already, then sort of the Jupyter Notebook script is going to actually train that model. And you just sort of, hold shift and hit enter a bunch of times and watch the script work and watch the script actually train that model. So while you're not necessarily doing a ton of model selection, you are going to kind of be interacting with the models that you can sort of take and use. But of course, I would absolutely recommend for you to think deeply about the model that you choose for your capstone project. Especially for, if you consider something like natural language processing, there's so many new models coming out all the time. Is it something where you're looking for, just some simple tag words? Are you looking for semantics between words or phrases? Or are you looking for pre-trained embedding frameworks that you can leverage? There are lots of sort of auxiliary models that you might get into. But I think that, to answer the question really directly, you are going to get a lot of exposure to models in sort of a click run capacity, and not so much in a building it from scratch. So, hopefully that's useful to everybody. And if people that maybe don't want to sort of fill in a ton of model stuff and they want to kind of get on with the deployments, we are going to cater to that as well. You can sort of imagine any given Jupyter notebook script can kind of be a one-line function that says sort of, create model. And so we're going to kind of, after we're done with sort of the modeling perspective and we're ready for deployment, we're going to think about our models in that way. So yeah, so that's my answer to the model question.
Great, thanks, Greg. There's a couple other people who've been asking about the tools we are using. You did address that. I just wanted to tell everybody in the audience, if you want more details or still have a question that we didn't quite address, please put it in there and we can circle back to it, because I know several people have been asking about the tools, and if they don't want to use Docker, they want to use something else, like what's the level of support there? So please continue putting that in the chat if we didn't quite answer that to what you're looking for. There are a few other questions. I'm going to hold them to the end. Okay. So I'll move on for now. Great. So in addition to all of the technical content that you get, I want to talk about a little bit of the additional services that we provide. So we are putting them under the umbrella of career services. Many people who come to us and are taking these programs are looking to move their career forward in AI. That doesn't necessarily mean you're out looking for a new job right away. It might mean you're just gaining skills for your current job. You just want to stay current. But most people are coming here for career advancement. So we have a few things that are here to support you in that. So a few of those things that we have guest speakers. So we bring industry professionals into class to talk a little bit more about their story, their company, something that they're working on, so that you can sort of expand your network, expand your understanding of the industry. We give every student who comes in a practice technical interview. We partner with a company called Skilled to offer that. We also can set you up with informational interviews. So if there's a specific industry, a specific type of job you're really interested in, we can help support you in sort of seeking out somebody who can talk with you about that job, about that industry, to help you sort of think about your career search. The last piece that's really important is our presentation day. So Greg has talked about your capstone project a lot. A big part of that capstone project is your final presentation. We do invite employers in to come watch those presentations and hope that you make some connections there, but really the point of that is to synthesize everything you've learned and get good at talking about it. Whether you're going to use that right now in a job search, if you're going to go talk to your boss about a new project you're going to be working on, or you're planning a job search in a year. The point of that is to really help you tell your story about everything that you've learned and all the skills that you've gained. The last thing that's not listed here is that we do have a career services director, a new staff member coming in very soon. So that person will be available to you for one-on-one coaching sessions, strategy sessions, resume reviews, things like that. And that person is available to you during the course and for 6 months following. So if all of this sounds good to you, and I hope it does, how can you join? So this program is intended for students who have some background in this area. So that means Python. We are looking for students who do have knowledge of Python and use it, if not professionally, some side projects. We do assess that during the application process. We say familiarity with ML concepts. So as Greg mentioned, you're not going to be running and developing and building models on your own. They are somewhat pre-built for you. However, if you're familiar with the concepts, it will be easier for you. So it's not a strict requirement. We're not looking for ML engineers, but people who have some familiarity with these concepts. A lot of students who come to this program are software engineers or data scientists or analysts or machine learning engineers. We do have machine learning engineers come to this program who want to learn more about that, the ops side of it. So familiarity with ML concepts is very helpful. Almost as important, I would say, a willingness to engage, to commit yourself to the coursework and put yourself out there. This is not an easy experience. We're not looking for students, or if you are a student who's just looking to check the boxes and check off tasks, you're not going to get as much out of it as somebody who's really looking to dive in and focus in on what you want to learn and gain those skills that are most relevant to you. So those are the people who we think really thrive in this type of environment. And we are here to support you at every single step along the way during that. In order to apply, there is an online application. It's brief, 15 minutes. We just want to know a little bit more about you, your background, why you want to move into ML. And then we do have a coding quiz. That's just meant to make sure that you do have the right Python skills and that you'd be ready to jump into the curriculum right on day one. It's not meant to keep anybody out. It's just meant to make sure that you're set up for success in that first day. It's not a pass-fail situation. If you're not quite ready right now, we will have this program again in the future. We will just tell you to practice Python and come back for the next cohort. Or if there's enough time, if you want to kind of go brush up, try it again for this upcoming cohort, that's also completely fine. This upcoming class starts on November 6th. So we recommend that you submit your application by the 25th of October in order to sort of get through that coding process, get through all your enrollment paperwork, and be ready to go on day one. So I'm going to pause there. Let me look back at the questions and see if there are any other things that I want to cover. Couple questions about tuition. So yes, well, this is a tuition-based course. It is $6,000. As Greg mentioned, that does include cloud credits as part of the program. So you do not have to pay anything additional out of cost. We do not have any formal scholarship programs at the moment. We do have payment plans, so we can spread that payment over a longer period of time in order to make that a little bit easier for students. I know that can be a big chunk of money up front. If there is another extenuating circumstance that you want to talk to me about, once you apply, you can reach out to me and we can, you can tell me about it. There's also a part in the application where you can say, is there anything else you want us to know? Please feel free to, tell us what you're looking for in that area as well. We can't guarantee that we can accommodate everybody, but we will do our best. Couple other questions. So keep the questions coming. I'm going to address a few before I push them back to Greg, actually. There was a question about the time zone. Our program for this November 6th cohort is in the Pacific time zone. So 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. We do hope to offer, additional time zones in the future. For this particular cohort, it will just be offered in the Pacific time zone. That being said, for our machine learning engineer program, we have people from around the world. So we welcome anybody from around the world. You are welcome to enroll. Okay, so a couple other questions, and I see that there's a few more coming in. I'm going to address a few that came in a little bit earlier that I think maybe they're a little bit more high level, and Greg can help answer. One of the questions that came up was about DevOps and how does MLOps and DevOps interact? What's the difference? Is this like DevOps? And I thought you'd be a good person to answer that.
Yeah, that's a great question. In my opinion, DevOps is sort of the last real, kind of breakthrough, software development framework or methodology to really, accelerate software development, to make it a continuously improving development pipeline, and to really, make sure that, IT is not sort of this separate and distinct thing, but sort of, quality and deployment expertise is kind of built into sort of agile teams. It's sort of like lean thinking for software is sort of DevOps, and what we're seeing now is we're seeing kind of this new idea of MLOps is kind of also positioning itself to be sort of at the intersection of operations, but now of ML products. And the way that this kind of manifests itself in a company or in a business today is that right now, we've got this interesting paradigm that we're approaching, where it used to be that that a software-based company had this sort of like, we can make infinite copies of software and it's just sort of zero marginal cost and it's free. And that was kind of the primary business model. You just make a ton of copies of this software. And that was sort of, classic software business strategy. And now we've got also this additional piece that we need to consider, which is kind of AI strategy and AI software strategy. Because what happens with AI algorithms and AI pipelines in production is that they don't just sort of operate and deliver the same exact thing over and over, no matter what. Rather, they actually depend on the data coming in. And once you reach sort of a certain level of, let's call it near human level performance for a task, or you reach a certain level of kind of diminishing returns of your ML project, what you need to do is you need to kind of start creating more ML projects. And so what you really want to do is you want to create an environment of continuous learning in your organization that brings in your AI strategy to the mix. So instead of just having classical software products, what you want is you want to have software products as well as sort of ML first or data-driven, data-centric, AI-powered products. And this sort of new phenomenon of AI-powered products is what we're seeing. A lot of new startups are now starting with strictly AI-first products. So this is sort of a new paradigm shift. And so it's sort of the next level of abstraction, let's say, the next evolution of this sort of continuous improvement, continuous deployment, learning organization in the 21st century. And that's sort of my perspective. It's sort of the next phase of software evolution. DevOps was the most recent, and I would say MLOps is sort of leading the charge into the next sort of 2020s here.
Great. I'm going to stop sharing just for now so that as we're answering questions, it's a little bit easier to see us. Great. I'm going to answer the next question. So there's been a few questions about the difference between our programs and deep learning AI's programs, which is a great question. So deep learning AI, we're very closely related to them, very closely associated. We love deep learning AI's courses. They're fantastic. So highly recommend them. So the key differences between a deep learning AI program and our program is that we are live and project-based. So that means that we have a cohort of students that all start together. You all are learning from each other just as much as you are learning from Greg. And you are completing this capstone project. And this is a pretty intensive capstone project where you will be working with 1 or 2 other people, and you will be getting ongoing support and guidance from Greg and our associate instructor. This will be a significant portfolio piece. You will be able to, when you complete the program, you will have a presentation, written and verbal, about this. You'll have a GitHub or some other way to demonstrate sort of what you've been doing. And so it's really a key piece in this project-based learning program, which is FourthBrain. So think about it as just, it's not that it's different from, it's not that it's better or sort of like after deep learning AI. It's not like a before or after type of situation. It's just a different format that really dives deep and really gives you that one-on-one and hands-on support in learning this content. So please feel free to put more questions in there as well. I also see a couple of questions about our machine learning engineer course. That is a 16-week program that is focused, as I said, on model development and a little bit of deployment afterwards. That cohort actually starts this week. So that's closed for enrollment at the moment, but our next one will begin in early 2022. And we have put in the chat, we will be publishing our schedule for at least the first half of 2022 within the next week or so. And you'll be able to apply for both the MLE program and our next MLOps iteration once we finalize that date. Great. There's one other question that I can give to Greg, and it's about distributed training. Let me go back and read it. Does the curriculum cover anything with distributed training with PySpark or Spark ML?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We actually, we do touch on this about halfway through the semester, where we sort of have a kind of a big data piece where we talk a little bit about distributed training with PySpark. We talk a little bit about sort of distributed computing in general, and there are a lot more details there that are going to be left sort of to the interested learner, and we're not going to demand that that's sort of part of your capstone necessarily, but we do touch on that. We are going to give you resources for you to think more deeply about that, and we will have some healthy discussions in class about those topics. Yes.
Great. Couple other questions. I'm going to start answering this, and then Greg, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. And it's about how the cohort works together. Are you finding your own time? Is it just on Saturdays? So a couple things. So during your live Saturday sessions, you will be in breakout rooms and you will be working with other students on a live project. So every single week you will get collaboration time with your cohort mates, your peers. We also have a Slack group. So you will be in a Slack team with every FourthBrain student and alumni. You'll have a channel just for your cohort. And so throughout the week, those are usually very active with questions, comments, talking about the assignment, planning projects, etc. We strongly encourage you to form study groups with each other. If you're in a similar time zone, have a similar study schedule, by all means, go ahead and do that. And then Greg, if you want to add anything to that, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. And, quite honestly, I've taken a lot of cohort-based courses myself. And the ones that have been most impactful and really the ones that I developed the best relationships in, are the ones that I really sort of went all in on trying to really spend time there and to develop those relationships with people that were aimed in the same direction as me. So I'm going to really try to make this cohort one where I kind of force a little bit of interaction, especially up front, and really try to make sure that you all can find, people that are vibing with you, that are potentially going to be great accountability buddies to touch base with week to week, that, you could potentially touch base a lot more than just in class. I mean, I am going to have weekly in-class things. I want everybody to meet everybody by the end of this thing and everybody to understand what everybody's project is by the end of this thing. But I really think that a lot of it, it's kind of up to the individual learners at some point. I'm gonna try to catalyze things very, very early. And I'm going to really also encourage all of you to kind of reach out to as many of your fellow cohort members as you can to, set up times in the first week or two to make sure that you do a proper introduction with people, to make sure that you share your story with people. It's like, hey, this is where I've been, here's where I am, here's where I'm going. What's your story? Are we aiming in the same direction? Do we have anything in common? Can we find some mutual ground? I would really love if everybody could find their own, preferred partners, off the bat within the first week. And you just don't do this without interacting with each other. So I'm going to very much put that social context, that community feel of the cohort front and center from day one. As soon as you dropped into the Slack channel, I encourage you to start interacting with people. And that's something that I'm going to certainly facilitate, but not demand. And, it's like you get in what you put out, like any cohort-based course. And I would say, every cohort-based course I've ever been in, there are, diminishing returns on, a Slack channel that sits there and doesn't get a lot of action after it's done. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you hit it hard early. You find the people that you connect with and maintain those connections with people. And I'm going to definitely 100% encourage that from everyone.
Great. I also want to take a moment to just define two terms that we've been throwing around, which I realize we haven't done. Cohort. What is a cohort? So a cohort is everybody who is starting in this upcoming November 6th class. So we call that the November cohort. We expect there will be roughly 20 people in that cohort. And then in the first few weeks, but definitely by the midpoint of the program, you will have formed project groups. And you can pick your own partners. So if you find somebody that you work well with, or that you're interested in the same topic, or you have similar work schedules and you can find time to work together, that works very well. You can do that. We can also help pair you up if needed, but we do not force you into any particular group. So the cohort, everybody who starts on November 6th, and then project groups are 2 or 3 students who will work on the capstone project together. Great. A couple other questions. Okay, this is a great one for you, Greg. I'm an AI ML product manager. I've coded, I program, but I'm not a programmer.
Yes.
Is this correct? Is this good for me?
Yeah, well, it depends more on what you're aiming at than where you've been in the past, I would say. So if you want to have sort of skin in the game on what you're asking your developers to do in the future to create ML first and AI first products, then I would say this potentially is for you. Now, is it going to be difficult? Is it going to be challenging? If you're not feeling, like, man, I'm not that great at Python, I'm not really haven't spent a ton of time on command line interface in recent years. Yeah, it's going to be challenging. But I think that is going to be up to you whether or not you're sort of up to that challenge. And this is a direction you really want to move into. I mean, we are going to tee this up so that much of the code that you need to run is actually written, and you need to make very small tweaks to it to actually make it work. So, for example, I know we heard earlier, can we use something other than Docker? It's like, yeah, you can, but we don't have that code sort of teed up already for you. And so if you're kind of following it along as somebody who's kind of getting back into this and not really sort of a software developer at heart, then I would say you will be able to follow along. Yes, but you have to, bring that commitment, bring that energy, and bring that enthusiasm for really learning the tools, and then you'll be fine. But if you sort of expect it to be more of a low code, no code AI experience, I would say the tools aren't there yet. Come back in a couple of years, something like that. That's a great question, though.
Great, thanks, Greg. One other question. It's about the level of command line programming experience and how extensive that should be.
Yeah, so I think really we're talking, basic. Can you, change the folder that you're looking at? Can you look at some files in the folder? This kind of basic entry level command line stuff, and you can watch sort of a, introductory command line video on any YouTube channel. This can work, whether you're on a Mac or whether you're on a PC or whether you're using a Linux distribution. I mean, really, as long as you can sort of, for your particular operating system, find a YouTube video and kind of be like, okay, yeah, I can kind of do that. Then that's kind of the ball you need to get rolling heading into this. Beyond that, I would say there's not a whole lot of kind of demands on your ability to be really, really good at command line interface coming into it. Again, we have a lot of the commands you actually need to run teed up for you. And so if you kind of want to follow it in more of a kind of like build it up just the way that it's being taught to you sort of way, rather than in a more custom, in a more uniquely your own, because you have all this development experience, you'll be able to do that. So I would say you need some familiarity, like, spend a little bit of time if you get into the program before, you show up day one and like you get hit with stuff, to really kind of just watch a few of those videos, do a few of those exercises, make sure you feel okay about it. Just like kind of the entry level Python stuff. If you feel okay about it, then I think you'll be okay in this particular course.
Great. There's one other question in here. Can the program be done working weekends only? So I just want to clarify sort of the time commitment expected. So we expect that you will spend between 15 to 20 hours a week total. 6 of those hours will be in class on Saturdays, and then 10 to 15 on your own time. So those 10 to 15, you can spread that out however you would like during the week, but 15 to 20 roughly over the course of each week. Other question was at the last day of class. So this is there are 12 weeks of instruction. There are some holidays in there though. So the last day of class is the week of February 12th. Just putting that on there as people are sort of mentally preparing for their class. Yeah. And yes, we are still finalizing our 2022 schedule, but that should be out within the next week or so. Plenty of time for you to apply and get oriented for whatever the next class will be. Great. I'm trying to see if there's any questions that we've missed. I don't think we have missed any yet. So we have a couple more minutes. If you have any final questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. I am going to share my screen one more time just so you can see some important links that I think you will find helpful. So give me just one second. Great. So like I said, if there are any additional questions, please put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. And if not, we will try to respond to you afterwards. So fourthbrain.ai/apply. You can see the applications for both programs there, but should be obvious which one's for MLOps. We do encourage you to apply by October 25th. That is deadline for you to apply, get through the process, and be able to start in time for November 6th. If there are any questions that you still have that we didn't get a chance to answer, please email us, info@fourthbrain.ai, and we will get back to you. This recording will be on our YouTube channel, so you can always come back and watch it again if you missed something or want to revisit one of the things that we talked about. Please share it. Feel free to share it. And we hope to see more of your applications coming in over the next couple of days. I haven't seen any more questions come in, so I'm going to close out. It was so nice to have you here, Greg. Thank you so much for all of your insights and additional information. And we look forward to having you in class. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.